And welcome to take two of our first edition of Let's Talk Teens. This was actually initiated by Elisabeth Stitt, one of our co-presenters today. Back in probably August or September, she reached out to Deborah and to me saying, hey, there's a conference coming up being hosted by the Institute of Child Psychology, and it's focusing on mental health and mental health awareness for youth. Are you interested in attending together, kind of like dividing and conquering? And we said yes. And then we said, all right, well, what do we want to do from there? We all work with teens in various capacities. We'll explain that kind of as we go. And we said, hey, we want to take some of what we learned from that event and our background knowledge. And we each just picked our own topics of what we felt was relevant based on what we were hearing from families in our respective realms, and put this together. We did have an event yesterday, so that's why I say today is take two of the same thing. We are recording it, so if something comes up and you need to jet or you need to head out and come back, we are going to be sending links to the recordings, and we are in talks about possibly doing it again with some different topics in a couple of months or such down the road. So stay tuned, we'll keep you posted. But without further ado, Elisabeth is going to kick us off today. And she's a veteran middle schooler. She is a mom and a stepmom. And so we had some really engaging conversations yesterday about that as well. So if that's relevant, definitely bring those up. But by way of an official biography, when you want to raise happy, healthy, and productive kids who are prepared for whatever life throws at them, Elisabeth is your go-to parenting coach and expert. Kids don't come with an operating manual. So if you think you're supposed to just know how to parent or that it's like magically built into your DNA, unfortunately, that's just not the case. With more than 50,000 hours of working with kids and parents to support her in her work, Elisabeth can guide parents through pretty much any situation. Parenting is tough enough under normal circumstances, and it's a skill. It can be taught, it can be learned, and it can be practiced. Author of Parenting as a Second Language and a longtime teacher with the Redwood City School District in California, Elisabeth brings more than 25 years of experience working with kids of all ages to the work that she does with her parents. Through her talks, workshops, and webinars, Elisabeth shines her warmth and wisdom with parents all over the world. So without further ado, Miss Elisabeth Stitt. In California, the farthest west of the three of us.
Exactly, yeah. And are you in Colorado too? Anna, are you in Colorado?
I am in Indiana.
Indiana. That's Central Time Zone.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so once again, we're well represented in time zones. Good, I like that. That's fun. Clarissa's going to share the slide deck.
We should be good, yeah?
Yeah. So my piece today is engaging your teens as critical thinkers. And honestly, this used to be one of the things that America was really known for, that we were innovative, we were creative, we were the thinkers. Other countries who might have had higher test scores in math, for example, would be great computational, great engineers, great detail people, could do exactly what you told them to do. And as we began to get worried that more and more jobs would go towards Asia and India, the school system shifted and we became more of that part of the world modeled in our education system. And so we began doing a lot more drill and kill, a lot more cramming of facts down kids' throats. And that's why homework moved earlier and earlier and earlier and earlier. And the result of all this is that parents felt this anxiety about jobs moving away and began to take a tighter grip on their kids' learning and began to micromanage everything that their kids were doing and how they were doing it. As a result, we've left less and less on our kids' shoulders to figure out, as we have taken on more and more of the responsibility of scaffolding things and chunking things out so that kids only have to engage with a piece right in front of them. Now, this is a hard balance because there are some kids who really need the scaffolding and they need the help. And so when teachers break assignments down and really say, this is part A, this is part B, this is part C, this is how you do part A, here's subpart 1, 2, and 3, it helps kids to succeed. It helps them to feel successful, particularly like kids with ADHD and some other learning disabilities. But the pendulum swung too far, seriously. And so we went from not giving them any support or scaffolding and just saying, here's the end product, here's what you have to do, now you go do it, to saying, here are all the tiny micro pieces along the way, and this is when it's due, and I'm going to check, and I'm going to correct, and mom and dad are going to correct and check. And so our kids are not as creative as they used to be. They're not as innovative as they used to be. They don't have that ability as much to look into a situation and to say, oh, this is how I might solve this. Like, that looks like that's a problem. That doesn't look right. This is how I might solve that. So that's why my emphasis today is on how do we do that? How do we engage our critical thinkers? Okay, step 1 is to encourage independence. And again, if you think of what were the kinds of things that you were doing independently when you were young, it's probably very different than what you are allowing your child to do. One example is just how far afield do we let our kids get from us, right? They are physically dependent on us. And honestly, after this year of COVID and all being in together, that is going to be the norm for them. They are going to be so used to being right next to us that they are going to have very big challenges in expanding their physical reach from us. And this even comes to the point of like not being willing to go to the other side of the store to get something. Like, oh no, I'll just wait for you. Could you go to the far corner of the store, please, and pick up the deli meat that we need for lunch this week? Oh, I'll just wait for you. That might feel like a lack of motivation or a lack of willingness to please. I suspect it's more that you've never walked me there specifically and showed me specifically how to do it. And I've never walked to the other side of the store by myself. So I don't know. That doesn't feel comfortable. Okay, so when we stop telling our kids what to do, they begin to have to figure stuff out on their own. And this really can go from very little things like what's the next assignment. I know we have some tutors on the call today, and I have sat with students and they are like, I practically have to lift the pencil and put it in their hand and lift their hand and put it to the paper. There's sort of no self-efficacy or self-sense of getting stuff done. So instead of telling your kids what to do, what do we do? Step 2. We want to start to model how are we thinking, right? We've been scaffolding and doing a lot of thinking for them, but we haven't been doing any of the metacognition with them. We haven't been talking to them about how we're approaching a project or what strategy we are using for success. And the fact of the matter is that we have lots of strategies for success that have become so automatic, we don't even recognize them as strategies for success anymore. And then we turn around and we kind of look at our kid and we go like, why can't you do this? Or why don't you do that? So here's a great example. Here's an example of, my father did not have a strategies for success when it came to getting out the door in the morning. And he would go roaring through the house going, where is my GD keys? where's my wallet? Where's my idiot book? Which is what he used to call his appointment book, is, you know, the good old days before there were iPhones with our calendar on them. And my experience every morning was like, oh, who can find it? Who can find it? Get it. So instead of his walking out the door being like, love you, kiss, kiss, hug, have a great day, go do great things, kiddo, it was this drama. And it didn't occur to me until much later. Why the heck didn't he have a drawer or a shelf or a hook or a basket, so that when he walked in the door, the wallet and the keys and the idiot book all went in some place, and the same place every day, so that he could find it in the morning? And possibly he gave me the gift of teaching me that strategies are really needed, because when you don't have them, life is a lot more chaotic and a lot more stressful, and we get nervous and we don't know how to approach things. So when we model our thinking out loud, like, oh, I'm going to have a drawer. It's in the key drawer. It's in the, it's in the go out the door drawer, whatever you call it. I always call it the key drawer, even though I put everything that's not key there too. That also has to go out the door. But you tell your kids, right? It always goes back in this drawer, right? And when in that odd moment that the phone is ringing as you're bringing the groceries in, the key doesn't go automatically there because you're trying to answer the phone as you put down the groceries, and then later your keys are on the counter. You pick the keys up and you go, oh no, these belong in the key drawer so that I can find them when I go out the door in the morning. So I'm articulating my strategy out loud so that the kids know what is making me successful at getting out the door early in the morning. I'm just curious, what are some of your favorite strategies for systems, routines, for making things more smooth, pleasant, easy? I guess I have to open the chat. Nobody did.
Elisabeth, John here. I don't have any teens in my house anymore, but I have learned within the last couple of months to do exactly what you're talking about. I knew where the keys were to the car, but I would frequently leave the house without my wallet and my license. So now the wallet stays with the keys, right by the front door.
Awesome. And now we have to add masks, right?
Exactly.
We have a whole new thing to like remember and to make automatic.
Right.
And so, yeah, exactly.
The key thing is a big one for me. I am notorious for getting ready to run out the house and not knowing where my keys are, or not knowing where I left my wallet or my purse or whatever. And so I didn't learn these things as a kid, and it sounds ridiculous. It just wasn't something that was my habit when I was a kid or even in college. And so it's been the same thing. It's hang the keys by the door. And I have a key in my bedroom where my purse, or a hook in my bedroom where my purse goes with my wallet and everything in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Anna, I love that. We have a bench with cubbies in our entry. Our kids leave everything there. Then they plug their computers in the office. And that's what we really want for our kids. We want the systems and the routines to be so automatic that it frees up their thinking for other things. But it also will give them models to transfer to other situations. So, as we talk to them about how we're organizing things, we are teaching them to think, oh, like, how could this be done? How could this be organized? All right, step 3. Okay, so how do we get from just modeling for them to actually getting them into motion themselves? We ask open-ended questions with the expectation that they are going to develop their own strategies for success. And my very favorite question for that is, what's your plan for that? one great advantage of this is that it cuts down on our nagging. So, and it puts the project, the work, the whatever it is into their wheelhouse and off of our plate. So, Clarissa, I seem to remember that you have a book report on Friday. What's your plan for that?
I don't know.
Oh. If you did know, what would your plan be?
I guess I got to read the book.
It's a great first step. What's your plan for reading the book?
I don't know, because I don't know where my book is. I guess I should probably find it.
Sounds like a plan. Okay, nice, thank you. Good jumping in there, Clarissa. What I really want you to notice in that exchange was two things. One, how long I waited. Now, I'm used to waiting that long. I've trained myself. But to you, it may have felt like an eternity. Like, come on, let's go. We're learning something. Tell me the next thing that it is. The other thing is that I didn't rescue her. And I didn't lecture her. So one of the advantages to helping our kids develop their own strategies for success is we don't waste any of our parenting collateral on stupid stuff, right? Our connection is our biggest key to having an open relationship that flows and has respect with our kids. And that allows for the fun part of being a family, right? When our kids feel connected, they are in flow, they are cooperative. When we are nagging them, that's not usually when they feel connected. So when we put it on their shoulders and we just ask, what's your plan for that? I literally like count to 10 or 20 or 30 in my head in order myself to do it. And I will share with you that I'm glad that I learned as a teacher. So as a teacher, so you might have noticed I speak quickly. In my household, I come from a household of people who talk fast. And you know what? In my house, it's perfectly okay for one person to talk and the other person to start talking before the other person stops talking. And we are fast processors and we have no problem with that. We could totally handle 2 or 3 people talking at once. Well, you can imagine that did not work very well in a classroom setting, because I would be discussing a novel and I would be saying like, what was the character's motivation in this scene? What do you think? Yeah, you're right about that, Doug. What do you think? Yeah, I got that. Good. And it was great for me. I was having a great conversation, but I wasn't letting kids do their own thinking. I wasn't letting them fully develop their ideas. And so I learned 2 tricks. The first trick was, I want to hear about the character's motivation in that scene. And I'm going to give you a minute to think about it. No, put your hand down. I'm giving everyone a minute to think about it. And then I would look at the clock. And when I first started doing this, it felt like 3 decades had passed before the clock would come around to the top. And then I would ask the question. And what that did was it meant that every single child in the room had had time to actually form an answer in their head. Now, I know there are some kids who formulate answers by talking out loud, but everybody begins to think about your question. So when we don't jump in with the answer, or we don't move on to the next thing, right? Clarissa said, I guess I'll have to go find my book. Like my immediate response is like, well, where did you leave it? Where could it be next? When did you last see it? You know, I mean, so if you just stick with what's your plan for that? and wait, 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 wait. In this way, we begin to have kids figure things out themselves. Now, yesterday the question came from a parent who was saying, yeah, but what if they never do that? What if they never figure things out for themselves? Can I give them a suggestion? And I asked the parent to first ask, what's your plan for that? Then prompt again, well, if you did know what the plan was, what would it be? And I'm not sure why that question works, but it works. If you did know, what would the plan be? And then finally, you can ask, would you be open to a suggestion of what you might do? And when you make the suggestion, you want it to have a lot of conditional language because you want to put as much space between your ownership of the idea and the idea itself, because you want to give them space to either take it on as their own idea or to reject the idea on its merits, not just because it's your idea. So I wonder if maybe one approach might be to da 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 da. And when I preface my idea with, I wonder if maybe it might be, I give the child a lot of space to say, like, no, that won't work, or no, I don't like that idea, or well, maybe it could. And then I can go again. I said, well, if it could work, how might that work? And again, I'm not telling you what to do, kiddo. I'm not telling you exactly how it has to go and how it has to be. I'm just asking if maybe that might be a way to do it. So this keeps us in flow with each other because I'm not coming down as the heavy who's telling you to get into action and to get it done. I'm not telling you I know better than you do how to do your work, even if I really do know, right? I'm resisting that. I'm trusting that you can figure it out yourself. Okay, now next slide. Okay, if we are going to give our children the space and the freedom and the room to try things out themselves, then when it fails colossally, as it may well do, we need to celebrate their mistakes. And we need to say, I am so proud of you for trying it out that way. But Mom, it didn't work, and I got a bad grade. Well, yes, you did this time. So what would you do next time? And maybe before that, you might even ask, what did go well about the way you did it? What did you like about this project? Where did it work? And then you can say, what would you do next time? What would you change? What's the missing piece? But don't ask all those questions at once, like I just did. Ask one question and wait and wait and wait. And when you first start giving the kids space to do this, and you ask them, you know, what was the thing that went wrong? Or what would you do next time? Very often, again, they retreat to that safe space of, I don't know. So you go back to, if you did know, what would be the thing you would most want to change next time? There's something about putting my head down when I'm waiting for a kid that helps me wait. I don't know why, but it puts me in this kind of like, I'm just sitting here hanging out mode, as opposed to this energy of like, just give me an answer because I want you to have an answer mode. Because as my mother points out, Mom, you can be really intense. So when I physically put myself back into wait mode, it helps me give kids the space to just be in whatever situation they're in. Like I'm there, I'm next to them, I'm ready to help them, but I'm not taking over for them. And I want you to consider when you've had a really rotten day or something is really bugging you and you come to complain to your spouse about that rotten day or this thing which you haven't figured out, which is bugging for you. Do you want them to jump in with, Deborah, you know what you should do?
Tell me, what should I do?
Is that what you want your spouse to do? Do you want your spouse to jump right in and tell you what to do?
No, because it makes me feel like they don't understand the emotions that are going on.
Yeah. So what do you want your
alienated
spouse,
from them?
what do you want your spouse to do?
Shut up and listen.
Or to say, how do you feel about that? Or what was that like? To explore a little bit.
Yeah, right? Just be present. Be open to hearing more. What was frustrating. And you know, when a kid comes home with a bad grade, they probably don't want to shift right away to what to do next time. And so taking the time to acknowledge the disappointment. Deborah Clarissa and I were all entrepreneurs. And being an entrepreneur is to be eternally disappointed, right? You hoped for this, you got this. And before you can get that hope back again to go out there and do your next entrepreneurial act, you kind of have to have a moment like, oh, that was less than I'd hoped for, right? I mean, nobody else is giving us a grade, but our grades come in different forms. And we got like our numbers aren't what we hoped for. But that's okay, because what I'm going to do next time, right? And then when we've had that moment, we can begin to do it. But if
It's a great thing to model with our kids.
Yeah. And if that space in between, somebody comes in and they're right into solution mode. Oh, well, you know what you should do? You know what you should have done? It just feels awful.
Can I add a thought, Elisabeth?
Yeah.
What just struck me, and this is actually something going back that I acknowledge that frustrated me with my mom, was like, I acknowledge that I'm a reasonably smart individual. I can figure a lot of things out. And I see it with my mom, I see it with my husband, that as soon as they jump into fix it mode, there's a part of me that bristles that what, you think I'm too stupid to figure this out on my own?
Yeah.
And I can remember feeling that as a teenager as well. You know, how many times did we see teens responding to their parents, I know, mom, I know. And it's like, well, of course, as the adults we're like, and I hear my mom in my head, well, you know, but you don't do. Right? My father is laughing because he can hear my mother saying that to me. Right? But it strikes me now looking at it going, if we're constantly providing that, number one, we're taking the opportunity away for them to figure it out, but we're also telling them that we don't think they can.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's an excellent point. And I think that one of the greatest absolute gifts that we can give to our children is our faith in them. Our faith that they will figure it out. So, you know, when you go through these cycles and they seem stuck, sometimes we want to jump in. If we can give them a few more days of thinking, like, well, I'm sure you're going to figure this out. And if you want to talk about it more, I'm here. Right? Again, the wait, the silence allows them to come forward.
May I just piggyback on that for a second?
Yeah.
When I was a young teacher and they first started to formally teach us about wait time in the classroom, I started doing that. And when I ask a question and then I would just wait. The kids would start looking around behind them to see who it was I was staring at angrily because I had the eyebrow going with my students when they didn't behave. So I had to stop and explain to them that I'm not giving you enough time to respond. So I'm going to take a little bit of time to to let you guys formulate an idea or an answer. So I learned from there that if you're going to change any kind of policy, whether it's in your classroom or in your house, giving people a heads up before you implement it is always a good idea.
Right. And actually, it's part of the metacognition, right? It's part of articulating out loud what is our strategy. So we can go to our kids and say, John, my goal for you is to become more independent in doing your own work. And my strategy for doing that is going to be two things. For one, I'm going to ask you what your plan is. And for two, I'm going to wait and give you the space to come up with your own plan.
Sounds like a plan.
Sounds like a plan. All right. My freebie for today is my Are You Raising an Adult checklist. And this is a list of 8 categories or areas that I see as being more on the parents than on the school system. These are sort of the life skills. And we need to have a strategy for making sure that the learning isn't nothing. Oh my God, you're about to go away to college. I'm going to try to cram in all that learning. Ideally, learning those life skills is sort of a 6th through 12th grade progression of gaining them. So one way to use the checklist would be to grade yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. Where is your child with each of these things? What grade are they in? And kind of think, okay, what could I do to help develop skills for them by the time they're in 12th grade? And that is me for today.
Awesome. And I saw, like, Anna, I saw you scribbling to write that down. I'll be sending out a follow-up email in the next couple of days, and we'll make sure that the links and the websites and the Facebook groups and everything that we all have available for you are in the email. So if you don't get it down or you're afraid of like getting it down wrong, don't worry. I'll send you the links in the next couple of days.
Yeah, I can put it in the chat. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So we're going to take just a quick, actually, first of all, Q&A. Any questions for Elisabeth? We didn't have any get chatted in, but any thoughts, any curiosities? Lynn, by the way, glad to have you. I know you're hanging out listening, or I'm hoping you're hanging out listening. So if you have any questions, definitely chat them.
I would like to piggyback on something that Elisabeth said earlier regarding allowing the kids to make mistakes. One of the reasons why parents don't want to let the kids make mistakes is because the parents are afraid that the kids are going to fail. But if you allow them to fail, then they'll understand that they can pick themselves back up and dust themselves off and keep going. When I used to coach basketball, because some of the kids would be so anxious about missing shots, we made it a goal that they should get out there and try to take 4 shots. That was their goal. We didn't count if they made it or not. We were just counting whether or not they took the shots. So it became a standard that your job was to try, and you were successful if you managed to get 4 shots in. So that way they understood that failure is the way you form your frame of references for it. And also, it's not a big deal if you do miss or you don't succeed with what you wanted to do.
What a great structure.
And that'll play into my chat about mindset as well. The other thing to keep in mind as we go through all of this, obviously we've all had a lot of experience working with kids. From a biological perspective, keep in mind that the brain actually forms from the back forward. So, it goes from the brain, the spinal column into the brain stem, and what they call the lizard brain, or like your fight or flight emergency, oh crap, what do I do? Emotional response brain is at the back of the brain. And the frontal cortex, which is right behind the forehead, that's where rational thought happens. And of course, that is the last thing to develop. So a lot of what Elisabeth is talking about here those are skills that, or those are thoughts and processes that actually take place in the frontal lobe. And so it's just like, you know, you wouldn't get mad at a kid who couldn't run a marathon at 3 because physiologically they're not built to do that yet. But when we get into these preteen and teenage years, like their brains are coming a long way. They've come a long way since they were born. And we expect them to process oftentimes the same way that we do. And so to Elisabeth's point about like, you know, when they say they don't want to go over to the store or the other side of the store by themselves, we look at it and we're like, seriously, it's the other side of the grocery store. Like, what's wrong with you? Like, this is the thought process often in our heads. When in fact, if they haven't laid down that pathway and had the experience or had that learning process, they don't have the skills to do it yet because their brains aren't fully formed. And by the way, they won't be until their mid-20s. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. But know that that's a perfectly reasonable when they're like, I don't know how to do a push-up. My muscles aren't strong enough to do it. It's the same kind of thing that their brain isn't quite there yet. And they really do need those things. So just a little point from a biology perspective.